Alright, they figured I'd just go ahead and continue on with these doors. I'm going to go ahead and start spot welding all this up. Then we'll get this part here cut off of this one. And that's where the challenge is going to be. Once I cut this off, it's just going to go doing. You know, it's usually what happens. So, we'll see how that works out. And then I'll end up probably shrinking this and doing like I did in the other one. And you saw how that one turned out in the other video. Of course, you can't tell anything. When I'm all done with it, you would never know. If I really want, if you wanted to spend the extra time on yours, I'm not going to do it on mine, but you could go and really do the edges really nice. You could make everything look like it was never done. It just all depends on how much time you want to spend. Even with the lap welded, you can make it look just like it was if it was butt welded. It's just a little easier. It just depends on you. So anyway, we'll move on. I'll talk to you guys in the next portion. For those you guys who are wondering, I noticed that this is a little bit off on the ones from the Funky Green Panels guy. This thing here. But it is also a little bit taller than the other one. So if your rust is up a little higher, you get what you pay for. It just depends. You know, these are a little cheaper. The metal's a little stiffer on these. The other one's a little more like the original sheet metal, but they do work just fine. Either way, I would put them on myself. Alright, so this is the next thing is if you don't have a lot of this material, like these things are broke off and missing, and it gets really hard to fix them. But this one here, this whole bottom part right between here and there is pretty much gone. So you know, it's not enough, there's not enough layers of metal there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out from about a ½ inch over here. I really want to get, I always like to leave something if I can between there and there. I'll cut out here, go across here, come back up, and then I'm going to make that piece with the metal bender, and I'll just lay it in here, and I'll butt it right here at the very edge, and butt it right here at the very edge, and then I can lay it on top of this part, and then I'll seam seal it when I'm all done. I'll just get in there and glob some seam sealer down in there. I'm gonna have to treat this too underneath here pretty good, so I'm gonna open it up first though real quick. we'll check it out. All right, if you see here, this is a big cockroach too, so I'll have to just cut out right here, go across it, see if yeah, it's a hole. Can't really tell. Yeah, I think it is. I'll just cut over to here, and I'll do the same thing I did over here. Let's look at the other door. I'll show you what that looked like. I just did a quick fill on here, and I put some spray can primer. It's like the 2-in-1 from Transtar, but I use the one from Medallion, which is a lot better. And I just threw a quick color filler on here. That's not finished again. I used to get sanded down and then real primer and built up, block sanded, and then finished. A little bit of glazing on it, whatever. So, but that's kind of how that turned out. That looked like this. If you're new to the channel, that's what this looked like. Same thing. So that's roughed in. That's other one's finished, or not finished, but you know what I mean. So I'll do the same thing I did here, and I'll make a piece for this, but I'm going to do them separate. I'm not going to try to make this piece and this piece at the same time, because if I open this part up of the door, it might collapse or get all weird and crooked and bent. So it's better if I put this piece in first and then make this piece. So if you're thinking about that stuff yourself, that might be something to think about. And then I'll probably just spot weld along this edge, but not all the way along here, because I'm going to cut this part out and then put another piece on. Okay, so I got this stuff here all patched up. Just pretty much the inner panel. I got to make the outer one. Let's take a look at it. So you can see it wants to move a bit. Yeah, there's no support there, so whenever you mess with these, you got to make sure got it welded on pretty good. I might put a little more metal on here, just to make sure these are plenty strong. Well, let's see. A lot of times they'll get loose. So I got to make this piece. So I'm not sure. Maybe I'll lay it on top. Yeah, I don't think I want to butt weld it. Boy, that'd be. I just know it's just going to warp like heck trying to get it to weld. That I know from experience. So anyway, I'll put it on here first and then wrap it the same way I did this piece here. Same way I did that. I'll make the piece, weld it along the edge here, and then, you know, put a few welds on there, and then I'll actually wrap it around and crimp it and all that stuff. That's how usually I do it. And then when I'm going around this corner, I may have to, in this inside corner, it may work okay, but I may have to actually slick cut a little bit, who knows, to get it to bend around the corner, and then weld it up a little bit right here. So anyway, but at least see how this is butt welded in here, and here it's butt welded, and then it's lap welded inside. Help make it a little bit stronger. This is pretty solid, even though it doesn't look very much like it is. So anyway, we'll move on. All right, let's see if this autofocus works. Here's the second door. Reprimed this one here. I used spray can primer the first time just to show you guys what I did. I put this is Tamco's good. They have really good primer. Their primer sands the best. It sands really good. It fills. You can put it on pretty heavy and it feels really good. And it sands almost like the old lacquer primer used to, that fast, but it's still a urethane primer. It has really good for dieback, all that stuff. All those issues are not there. So let's talk about this door, because some of you guys are gonna not want what I've got on this thing. I ended up with quite a bit of filler on this, and I'll tell you why. And this is the thing you end up with these doors, is you have the supports. Okay, let's talk about the long panel. The long panel real quick. You see you have all these supports here all the way along. Even on the long panel, they don't warp near as much as this section of the door. So if you have to replace this section right here, like I did, the whole section was rotten along the bottom edge. And you're going to find when you go to weld this in that there's no support there. So this thing I don't care. You can try everything you want. You're probably going to have a serious warping problem. Okay. And mine was just basically when you cut away the old panel, it just kind of lifts up on its own. So when I welded, I started in the middle. I tried to push it down evenly across, very gently, and spot weld it. And the Harbor Freight welder, which is really cool, doesn't get it really hot. So it wasn't warped because of the heat. It was warped because of right where I pushed it down in the first place. When I first pushed it down, I started in the middle, I moved out. Okay. That part was firm, and when I was pushing over here, it pushed the middle part in more. So I ended up with a dimple right here, a low spot. So I attempted to push it back out, but you run into, and this is why I say on these doors, you have support right there. If you see right in the middle, there's support. It goes up the door. There's one that goes here, and there's only holes in it. So there's no way to hammer that back out. So I had to try and heat it up and push it out. And then when I did that, of course, it dimpled again, like over here, then it dimpled, and it's a flat piece of metal. It's just almost near impossible to get straight again. That's just the bottom line. Okay. If you want to eliminate that, if you don't want to deal with that, you don't want it, 1/4 inch thick Bondo or filler on your panel, which I ended up with about that, probably, I don't know, could be even thicker, I don't know. I'm right around 1/4 inch is what I think. I ended up having to fill all the way up to here. I didn't get it all in video. It was just too much hassle. I was going back and forth too much. It's just too hard to do on camera. So I ended up with quite a bit of filler on this. But again, it'll be fine when it's done. But there is the filler there. So if you guys are really one of those people that's just crazy about not having very, very thick filler on your car, then I'll tell you how you deal with it. You go to Classic Fab and you buy a complete door skin over. That's the only way to really go to not have that problem. If you try welding in this section, you will have warpage. Somebody says, oh, I don't. Bullshit. You've got warpage. I'm telling you, you're going to have problems, because it's just a matter of the sprungness of the metal. When you cut that open, just that little bit of sprung in there, and you're trying to just put it back in place, it's just going to warp. It just does. There's no way around it. I don't know how many of these doors, and I can weld a lot of things and not get warpage if I want to. Okay, this I didn't really care that much because I knew that it was going to happen. It just does. There's just no way around it. So, Classic Fab, real quick. I talked to Gerson. I forget his first name. I talk to him all the time, shows, and I told him about 5 years ago. I said, dude, why aren't you making door skins? He goes, oh, well, I don't think there's a real big need for it. blah, 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 whatever. And I said, dude, I really think it's coming to that point where we need door skins, because I had just done a door like this one, and it was a hassle, and it had filler on it that was thicker than I wanted it to be, because I don't like, I don't like 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch of filler on my work. I try to stay under that. Usually I'm at 1/8 or something. So I said, dude, I really need those door skins, So next year I saw he had door skins. So he does have them now, and I checked all the years. He actually makes the inner shell as well, the support they call it. And so you can buy a skin for any year, and you can buy the door shell for any year. Now, I don't know how well they fit, but he does have them, and I'm sure that's better probably than ending up with what I ended up with, which is quite a bit of filler. And a lot of it, the whole area of the door. I'm using good quality filler, so I'm sure it's not going to crack. It does, there's some dimpling on, there's none on this. I had to get it down to where it wouldn't drum anymore. So if it pushes in and doesn't come back up, or pushes in, drums back and forth and moves, you can't put filler on that. So, I got it to that point where it was firm, but it was definitely lower than I wanted to, and I couldn't pound it back up because there's just supports all over the inside of that door. So, like I said, if you want to get away from that, you can go to his website and get those. It's probably it's affordable. It's not cheap. Okay, you can find a used door. I've seen doors at the at Octo that are not perfect. They want $700, for a door, for a used door, and it's just like, but that's not the going rate. I've seen them for less than that. I've seen them for $300, but it might have an issue if it's just the bottom of the door, and you could change just the bottom section. That would be okay, because then you're only looking at $50. But now you're into a door. How much? $50 here. You're gonna spend all that money on the part for that, when you can buy the skin, which is $250 on his website, and $325 for the inner support. You're talking about $5 1/4. You have a brand new door, but you do have to put the skin on it. Now, they do have this tool here, very cheap on Amazon. This is not metal. They do wear out. They don't last forever. I don't know how many skins you get out on one of those. These skin zipper tool, and what it does is it goes on like this, okay? And that hammers your first 45 this way, and then you go, you have thick and thin here. So then you can go one way like this, and go around your skin, put it on, and then you can go the other way, which is this way, and get it hammered down real tight. And it's not that easy to use, so don't think it's going to be some solution for everything. But you watch some videos on somebody using one of these, they might make it look really easy. But they do have these tools available. I did this one with hammer and dolly. The reason I did that is because a lot of you don't have this tool, and the hammer dolly works fine, but you do end up, if you notice here, it looks kind of thick. It's not filler. The filler is almost gone, right? There's almost no filler on there. Of course, my sanding is a little funky. Again, this all gets blocked, gets a second coat, then I go through and I'll touch up all this little stuff like that with glazing. So, but I ended up with not tire all the way flat. When you do your own door skins, you're probably not going to get that really flat looking, like as if you go to like Washburn Metal, or you go to Sean, or you go to Maury Hudson. They may get them really good, because that's all they do is metal. So, and all they do is Volkswagen. So when they're doing all the same thing over and over and over, you can get it pretty good. You get pretty good at it. So you guys doing your stuff at home may not be like that. So anyway, but that's the way to get around it. If you really are crazy about not having filler on your stuff, just buy the door skin and replace the whole thing. Since they are available now, they didn't used to be. Again, I wasn't the only one talking to Gerson about that. I'm sure the other guys were also talking to him, and we said, "Hey, dude, I'd love to see door skins." And he's like, Or like I said, we were talking about doing whole doors, and I seen he goes, well, the problem is the forging of these, you know, the hinges. I said, well, dude, just make them without hinges and let us weld them in, you know. And when he makes them, I guess he figured out how to do it, how to make these, to forge those the right way to make them come out right. I don't know what he ended up with there. But again, you know, does it fit? I don't know. You know, maybe not, but probably. Knowing him, he's pretty good at that, making sure they fit, because he does his own metalwork. He built a whole bus from the ground up. I mean, he's he built a barn door basically with nothing, and built it himself, and did it, you know, so he knows what fits and what doesn't, you know, and how to make stuff work. So anyway, good news, they do have door skins if you want to do the whole thing. Before we didn't have them, and it was just a frustrating part where we had just fixing these bottom of these doors is really hard. You'll find out if you try and do that. Just be ready. Just forego thinking that you're going to get it without any filler or very little filler, and just realize it's going to happen. You will get it with a lot of filler in it. Just bottom line. Talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll move on to the next project.